I never expected moving back home for the summer would make me question everything I thought I knew about my parents. At first, it was simple. My room was waiting, the apartment smelled the same, and the familiar creak of the stairs felt comforting. But then I noticed it. One of the rooms was sealed shut. Completely locked. No key, no note, nothing. I froze the first time I saw it. My parents noticed me staring, and suddenly their calm expressions vanished. My mom's face went pale, and my dad's hands started shaking so badly I thought he might drop his coffee. "That's not yours anymore," my mom said, a little too quickly. Her voice was tight, brittle. "It's private," my dad added, trying to smile, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Something about them felt wrong. My heart started racing. Why the sudden secrecy? This room had always been just another part of our apartment. Nothing special. Or so I thought. I tried to let it go. I told myself maybe it was just a storage space, maybe they were reorganizing, maybe there was something they didn't want me to see. But it wasn't just the locked door. It was the way they avoided looking at me when I asked, the tiny tremor in my dad's hand when he turned away, the almost desperate way my mom changed the subject. My instincts screamed at me. This wasn't normal. Not even a little. And so the curiosity built. Every day, I passed that door, trying not to notice it, trying to focus on the mundane things, my old textbooks, the coffee stains on the counter, the way our cat always followed me from room to room. But my eyes kept drifting back, and every time I looked, a little knot formed in my stomach. What were they hiding? Why now? Why me? Then, one morning, they left for work as usual. I waited until the apartment was quiet, until their cars disappeared down the street. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I stood in front of that door, staring at the lock, knowing that behind it was something I wasn't supposed to see. Something that could change everything. I took a deep breath and reached for the handle. My fingers trembled as they brushed the cold metal. I paused, heart hammering. And then, slowly, I turned the lock. The door creaked open, and the sight inside made me step back. My stomach dropped. My hands went numb. And at that moment, I knew life as I knew it was over. But what I saw next, I couldn't have prepared for it. And 5 minutes later, I was dialing 911. I couldn't move. My eyes were glued to what was inside, but my mind raced faster than my heartbeat. How could my parents have kept something like this hidden? What kind of secret could turn a simple room in our apartment into a cage of mystery and fear? My hands were trembling, but curiosity had already taken over. I had to see everything. The room was dimly lit, just a faint strip of light sneaking in from the hallway. Dust floated in the air, and the faint smell of something metallic and old hit me immediately. My eyes scanned the space, and that's when I noticed the first oddity, a stack of boxes piled haphazardly in the corner, each labeled in my mom's neat handwriting. But the labels didn't make sense. Strange symbols, cryptic words, dates that didn't match anything I remembered from our lives. Some boxes were sealed tight, others partially open, showing glimpses of papers, small objects, and something that looked like medical supplies. I paused. Why would they hide these things? And why now, after all these years? My childhood memories of my parents, the comfort, the discipline, the small warmth of routine, felt fragile. Everything seemed to shift in that moment. The home I thought I knew was suddenly unfamiliar. The safe space I had come back to felt like a trap I had just stepped into. I stepped closer, my curiosity mixing with fear. Something about the arrangement of the boxes, the smell, the way the shadows danced across the walls, made me realize I might be in over my head. My chest tightened. Could I really handle knowing the truth? Could anyone? And then I saw it, something partially hidden under a heavy cloth. I froze. My mind screamed at me to stop, to leave, to walk away, but my body wouldn't listen. I edged closer, and my fingers brushed the cloth. The instant I did, a jolt ran through me. My stomach dropped. My heart raced even faster. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a box of old things or forgotten memories. I stepped back, my hands shaking, my mind spinning. The weight of the discovery pressed down on me, almost physically. I could hear my own breathing, loud and uneven, in the silence of the room. I knew I couldn't turn back now. I had to understand, had to see everything, even if it terrified me. And then I realized something else, something that made my blood run cold. I wasn't alone in the room. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. At first, I thought it was just a shadow. But no, there was movement. My heart slammed against my ribcage like a warning drum. How could this be? Who or what was in the room with me? My hands shook uncontrollably as I realized I might have stumbled onto something far beyond what I was ready to handle. I edged closer, every step careful, almost silent. The dim light revealed more: boxes pushed aside, papers scattered on the floor, and something that made my stomach twist. There, under a thin blanket, was a small form curled up, barely moving. Panic collided with disbelief. How could my parents hide someone or something here, right under my nose? The rational part of me screamed to run, to get out, but I couldn't. My curiosity had already hooked me like a fish on a line. I crouched down slowly, forcing myself to breathe steadily. That's when I saw the face, or what little of it I could see. Pale. Weak. Eyes fluttering. And then I noticed the smell, antiseptic, mixed with something sour, like decay. My mind spun. Who could this be? What had happened to them? I thought of my parents, and suddenly the fear intensified. Were they capable of something like this? Why would they hide it? What had they done? Every instinct screamed at me to call for help. My hand went to my phone, but I hesitated. What if I was overreacting? What if I misunderstood the situation? But the sight of the small, fragile figure, struggling even slightly to lift their head, shattered any doubts. This was no ordinary secret. This was urgent. Dangerous. Life-threatening. I glanced around the room, taking in the other items. Jars filled with strange substances, documents with dates and names I didn't recognize, and a locked cabinet that clearly contained more secrets. Every corner seemed to whisper danger. Every shadow hinted at betrayal. How had I never noticed? How had my parents lived with this hidden in plain sight? And then, the small figure whispered something, just barely audible. My ears strained. My pulse spiked. I leaned in closer. I knew I couldn't wait another second. Whatever this was, whatever they had hidden, it was beyond my ability to handle alone. My fingers dialed 911, and my voice shook as I explained the situation. The operator's calm voice did little to steady my nerves. I kept thinking, will they arrive in time? Will this be enough? And as I hung up, I realized the most terrifying part wasn't what was in the room, it was knowing my parents had put me in this position in the first place. The seconds stretched into eternity as I waited. The room felt smaller now, suffocating, every shadow pressing down on me. I couldn't stop staring at the small figure under the blanket, wondering how my parents could keep something or someone like this hidden for so long. The sound of sirens in the distance made my heart jump, but also brought a tiny thread of relief. Help was finally coming. When the paramedics and police arrived, everything moved quickly, almost too fast to process. The officers took control immediately, asking questions, checking the room, and guiding me back so they could handle the situation. I stood there frozen, unable to take my eyes off the chaos. My parents came home shortly after, returning from work, faces pale and anxious, as if they sensed something had gone horribly wrong. Their expressions shifted when they saw the authorities: shock, panic, confusion, and maybe even guilt. What's happening?" my mom stammered, voice trembling. My dad just shook his head, unable to speak. And in that moment, I realized the reality of what had been hidden was far worse than I had imagined. This wasn't just a secret, it was a burden they had carried for years, and somehow, it had ended up on me to discover it. The paramedics revealed what I had feared. The person in the room was in critical condition, in desperate need of medical attention. The documents and supplies scattered around suggested my parents had been trying to manage the situation themselves, without outside help. Panic, fear, and a strange mixture of anger and sympathy swirled through me. I loved my parents, but I didn't understand why they thought hiding this was the right choice. Every memory of my childhood, every story of family warmth, suddenly felt tainted. I followed the paramedics as they carried the small figure out of the apartment. The authorities started asking me questions, what I knew, what I had seen, and how long I had suspected something was wrong. Each answer felt heavier than the last. I realized that the hidden room, the secrecy, and the danger weren't just a past event, they were a reflection of how little I truly knew about the people I trusted most. And as I watched my parents speak quietly with the officers, my chest tightened. Even after all this, I still didn't know everything. There were questions that hadn't been answered, secrets that hadn't surfaced. And deep down, I knew one thing for certain: some truths were far more dangerous when hidden, and uncovering them could change everything forever. I stood in the quiet of the apartment after the paramedics left, the room now eerily empty, the shadows stretching across the floor like reminders of what had happened. My hands still shook, my heart still raced, and a heavy weight pressed against my chest. Everything felt different, like the walls themselves knew what had been uncovered, like the very air was holding its breath. I couldn't stop thinking about the small figure they had carried out, about the secrets my parents had kept, and about the moment I had realized I could no longer trust the safety of the home I grew up in. It was hard to process. I loved my parents, but the betrayal stung deeper than I expected. How could someone I trusted so completely hide something so critical? How could they risk a life for the sake of secrecy? I kept replaying their faces, the tremor in my dad's hands, the pale panic in my mom's eyes, and it hit me that fear, shame, and desperation could drive people to make unimaginable choices. And sometimes, discovering the truth is the only way to act, even when it feels impossible. I thought about the questions that had been swirling in my mind for weeks, the curiosity that had brought me to that locked door. Was I wrong to open it? Or was it the only choice that could save a life? The answer didn't come easily, because the reality was complicated. Some truths are messy. Some secrets exist because people think they're protecting others, but in the process, they create danger. I realized that courage isn't always about fighting. Sometimes, it's about choosing to face what you've been warned to leave alone. As I looked around the apartment, everything familiar now felt tinged with uncertainty. The hallway, the living room, even my own bedroom, all carried shadows of what I had seen and the tension of what I didn't yet know. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I had acted, and that action had made a difference. I had faced fear and curiosity and done what was right, even when it scared me. So I leave you with this question: what would you do if the home you trusted most hid a secret so dangerous it could cost someone their life? Would you walk away, or would you face the unknown, even if it meant shaking the foundation of your family forever? Some secrets are never meant to be hidden, but sometimes uncovering them is the only way to survive and to protect the people you love.